I was barely 20 years old when my father, the man in the picture, died. The official cause was a heart attack that put an end to a long illness. But the real story, of course, was much more complicated. It was something growing inside him for years. Okay. You see, my father, he'd always been a mystery to me. When I was a kid, as my Colorado accent gives away, I grew up in Belarus, a country where most people struggle to get by. But somehow, we always had money, more than most. We had a nice apartment, we had vacations, he never worried about bills. But one thing I never knew is what exactly did he do? Whenever I would ask him, he would smile, just like that, ruffle my hair and say, "It's just business, son." What I didn't know is his business was slowly killing him. One night, when I was 12 or so, I remember waking up to the sound of my mom crying. I peeked through the door to see my father clutching his chest, his face twisted in pain. He waved off our concern, "It's nothing." And we believed him. We always did. We wanted to. A few years later, my little brother, this other guy on the left, came home to find him dead. A heart attack. Another one. He couldn't hide this one. And when he died, a bunch of secrets started unraveling. My father had been living a double life, working in a world I personally never imagined. Just like in Ozarks, he was a money launderer for corrupt politicians and businessmen. Crash course on Belarus for you. That was the stress on his heart. That was the pressure that never let him rest. And that was the price of my comfort. I was angry. I was angry at him for all the lies. I was angry at the world for making him believe that that was his only option. I was angry that no one, not even he himself, had chosen to see what was happening to him before it was too late. And that anger could have consumed me. I chose to transform it. I chose to believe that if my father suffered in silence, I want to make sure that others did not. I chose to believe that if my brother's memories are reserved to a video, just like that, others did not. Now, I didn't happen to be great at chemistry or biology to cure cancer. But I happen to be fairly good at performance digital media. And I get a chance to work with some organizations here in this room who actually solve these issues. Thank you. In my quest to find a solution to all of it, I want to take us back to 2025, where around a year ago, I was at the stage at a different event talking about a problem that I'm sure all of us faced. Revenue up, count of donors down, revenue per donor up, fewer donors, aging donor database, Dana was talking about it, and not sure what to do about it. But at the time, this abyss, AI solves all issues. We can use AI to do everything. We don't need to buy groceries, we don't need cars, we don't need anything. AI solves the entire world. I drank the Kool-Aid at the time. So we got together in DC in New York with about 100 different organizations. Some of you are here, and decided to workshop it. Hank, I see Ethan here in the picture. You can tell him I owe him some royalty. Hank in the picture is from IRC. We workshopped it. We ranked all of our organizations on the curve that we called the AI maturity curve. Not surprising, most of us landed straight in the middle, kind of that 2 out of 4. Anybody would self-rank higher than 2 out of 4? Yep, that's that golden average. And we spent an entire day working through a number of projects with no other reason and no other purpose but to move up the AI maturity curve. But besides all of this, we learned a couple what I call dirty secrets, a very unobvious insights. The first one, let's call this man Alex. Alex is a fundraiser. Alex stresses every day not about becoming the most AI advanced. Alex stresses about a meeting with the CFO, about missing goals, about having to work late into the evening instead of reading a bedtime story, and many other things, but not AI. Who feels they relate to Alex? Mm-hmm. That was one dirty secret. The other dirty secret we learned was the biggest objective that Alex has, and this is coming from about 100 organizations, is how do I increase sustainers? Not how do I compete with Microsoft, but how do I increase sustainers? And the third dirty secret was challenges that Alex is facing rarely have anything to do with AI. They have to do everything with too many data sources, fear of usage, siloed data, focus on ROAS instead of lifetime value, lack of segmentation. These things that been true for years and will be true for years and have very little to do with AI. And at the same time, have lots to do with AI because we can use it to solve it. We summarized it into this analogy. I call it a 3.5-legged stool, where all of it comes to misaligned digital media, which is not using digital media to actually do what we want to do and reach the objectives, which is fueled by a lack of another leg, which is lack of personalization, which is fueled by lack of usable segmentation, and fueled by lack of siloed data. That's what I've heard from 100 organizations, give or take. And we'll use this to dig into the two of them a little more. The personalization and misaligned media, just those two, especially after the first donation. The two biggest quotes I've heard, first, personalization, is what is lack of personalization? The summary out of all these interviews was, we know our donors' names and giving history, but we don't know how to move their hearts at every point. Email, direct mail, digital asset. And for digital media, we spend money on digital ads, but we don't invest into what new-to-file and existing donors want to become sustainers. We'll use this as a first exercise. I need a captain for every table. One person, just like in college, raise your hand to be a captain. Okay, can I ask captains to stand up, please? Please. That's why I never say it up front. Can you quickly tell me your name so I can memorize you? I'll try to remember everything. Justin? Ren? Heidi? Rashad? Brian?
You don't know.
Brian? Eric? Tara? L? Okay. I'll forget throughout. Excuse me for that in advance. Let's take a minute within these two issues, lack of personalization and misaligned media. What is one more example of how it manifests today in your organizations? Issues, not solutions. Just one phrase per table. Let's take a minute, and then captains, I'll ask you to say that one phrase. Thank you. And while you're doing that, I'll tell you a story. Once when I was running a workshop similar to this, I pulled up a 30-question long digital survey that was way too long to do. And while people were filling it up, I was telling them dad jokes.
I missed it.
And I don't even have kids. That was a bad idea. Yes?
There we go.
Just one more example, like one more quote of how lack of personalization and/or misaligned media manifests at your tables organizations today. Issues. Problems, not solutions. And don't use cards that Alexandra gave you during the break. Not yet. Okay? This is just a quick one to get us going. There is no need for this to be perfect. It's just for us to get into the mood. So let's hear from the captains. Let's hear from the captains, and no specific order, but what are you hearing from your tape? Yes.
Brent had a great example of when they subscribe to one of the an email, they get subscribed to all emails, so they just found out somebody is getting 501 emails a year.
Oh, wow. Okay, so subscribing to one email, getting all of them at the same time. Yep. You're not alone there, I'm pretty sure. Okay. What about this table? Heidi?
We were talking about how with like the lack of personalization, that can be a problem at my org. We have, like you say, name and giving history, but we don't have the ability to segment based on like donor interest.
Okay. No segmentation based on donor interest. That came up every time when I talk to organizations. Rashad? Yeah, like too many data sources, kind of silos in the data. Yep. Brian?
Similar to what they just shared around just over-indexing on one channel, primarily email, as opposed to multi-channel communications.
Yep. Yeah, just one channel, couple channels instead of Omni. Makes sense. Let's do this side. Tailoring or lack of tailoring of programs to donors. Yes? Let's do that table.
Mostly said, because we had no segmentation and then like ownership around communication and stewardship.
Yep. Thank you. So lack of stewardship, lack of segmentation. Tara? Yeah, surface level. Yep. Okay, surface level. Thank you. Surface level understanding of like who they are. That's what I'm hearing, yes? Okay. Let's go to the middle. Yeah, siloed, not integrated data, yep. Yeah, missing the opportunity to bring them into the mission, not just into the nation, to an extent. Yep. Last one, not the least. Okay. See, I told you I'll forget. So, nothing unique, right? Most of us are facing the same issues. And after I've seen the same last year, my pinky promise to myself and my pinky promise to all of you today is we'll go through some of the issues that you identified, and you leave with at least one idea each for what it can mean for your org. Fast forward, 2026. The problem is still the same. 4 out of 5 donors don't donate to the same organization ever again. This is from the most recent Given USA report, one number that stood out to me. It actually gets worse with younger audiences. For donors over 65, this is 20%. For donors under 40, this is 80%. It's a little bit of a worrisome signal. So what if we treated AI not as a target, but as a magic wand to solve these issues. And what if that magic wand wasn't just an imaginary one, but actually the one we built, and the one we use to apply to these issues? And we'll have a guide to go through that. This is Margaret. She's totally imaginary. She is a donor to Habitat for Humanity, just because. She donated to them once. She goes on a train every day. She looks at this neighborhood. And at one point, she saw that family that moved into one of the houses that Habitat built, and she decided to donate to them. Ever since, she got a thank you email. She got a bunch of other emails. But she never converted into a sustainer. She's already on the donor file. But how much do we know about her, and how do we convert her? We'll start with that first leg of the stool, the personalization. On your tables, Alexandra passed on this pink card throughout the day. It says lack of personalization. Let's imagine this scenario, which we spoke about most of us are facing. You already know donors. You know their most recent donation. You know the time, you know the frequency, you know the value of donation, and maybe even lifetime value. You might even know their churn risk based on some RFM modeling. The problem is that none of this data truly lets you personalize your communication to this donor. So if you did have a magic wand, I can do anything with it. What else would I want to know about the donors? Where can that information be gathered from? And what would the magic wand do to their experience afterwards? We'll do 4 minutes, and then captains, I'm asking you to please write one statement, one idea that you can summarize your table on that card, and then we'll go through them. And I'll just go around. Let's settle back in. Captains, and I promise we'll switch captains after this exercise for the next one. You didn't sign up for the whole day. Let's hear it up. What would the magic wand do? Any order. Sure, Rashad? Okay, so capture the why for why did they donate. So we actually can tap into that why. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so if they gave one time, we don't really have the relationship with them. Like, what do they care about? You would want to know what they. Oh, I see. Why didn't they become monthly on the first donation? Got it. Okay.
Just again, leading into the why, but also like just more info on like their interests. We usually realize they don't actually know a lot about the organization. They know about the one piece that they've been involved in, right? Just expanding their horizons, getting them their resources, getting them to attend a different event, like getting them engaged deeper.
Got it.
If you get them on the phone, you can usually get it, but
Yes.
you don't know about everybody.
Okay, so you would want to, even after the first donation, get them to know more about everything you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can find what's resonating with them the most.
Because my ROI off of that is usually really high.
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
We talked about, again, the why for the donation, and also it would be helpful to know the donor's preferred communication channels.
Okay. So why did they donate? So we can tap into that, and where do we reach them? Thank you. Yes.
Building on that, I was wondering too, some ways that they want to be acknowledged or thanked, the preferred ways, and then like what kind of reports or success stories do they want to receive?
So what do they want to get back from the organization for the donation that they made? Love it?
Most of ours were already said, but personal values, what inspires them, what other causes they're supporting.
Personal values, what else they support. Yep. So we can tap into them as a human. Love it. Tara.
Similar to the one, it was about understanding donors' relationship to the mission, connection to the mission, personalize the experience more. Other organizations is who the donors donating to.
Yeah.
If we can give them some sort of like, we can have some relevant understanding or interest.
Okay. So their connection to the mission, which other organizations they are donating to, and essentially, like, what else do they support? Donations, nonprofit. Okay? I did well, thank you, Toph. Who didn't go yet? Please.
I think that so we currently ask our folks when they after they complete the giving form, they have a if they stick around after we accept their gift, they can tell us what inspires them, what inspired their gift today.
Uh-huh.
And having similar to those users, we learn a lot about their values. At the Evolve Foundation, sometimes we see things such as like legacy of all of things, what they did for their life before, or maybe it's just feelings that they have, it may be current environments, it could be hopes for a better future, it could be values alignment, it could be so there's a whole number of things, but I think if there's a magic wand, we'd be able to create profiles of these type of people.
Right. So,
They can have a place and then
yeah, we would know what inspired them. I like that word. We would know what inspired them. Yes?
Can I ask a question? Is it like an open-ended answer, or is it a bunch of A, B, C, D?
it is open answers.
It's just for the-
It's open. So
Makes
and we
sense,
get things from
especially what you
every
guys do.
Love it.
sometimes it's just like a big diatribe and my family, my grandmother.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just Trump, like
Sure. And then is it easy, like, all the data comes out easily, like you can see that in an Excel or something?
yeah, it comes out in Excel and then sometimes I just read hundreds of these. We should use AI.
I like that a lot. Yep. You're going right there. Yes. Okay, I think we heard from everybody. I don't remember the middle table in the back, but
Exactly the same thing everyone else has said.
okay. So I'll give you a pass. I'll give you a pass. So one thing in common is how do we move from knowing about our donors to actually knowing our donors? What inspires them, why they give, who they are. And one way I usually talk about it is we as fundraisers usually look at data through the lens of the numbers. How much did they give? What is the donor ID? What is their total value? How frequently they give? What is the churn risk? What is their capacity maybe? How much more can they give? Sometimes, what is their RFM, recency frequency monetary segment? Maybe even like what is the next best action? But all of this is usually based on the quote-unquote fundraising view. And it's very helpful for allocation of the budget, but it's ultimately useless for personalization of messaging. It doesn't tell us why they gave. And this came up pretty much from every table. What we would love to do if we had that magic wand is supplement, not move, but supplement that view with almost like a marketing view. With a marketing view of who are these people? Why did they give? What is their motivation? What is their inspiration? What is the, I like the phrase, what is the job that they're hiring the organization for when they're giving that donation? And if we could combine those two, we could probably tap into that value more. Well, how can we use AI to do that? And we know this about major donors. We have given officers talking to them every day. But do we talk to mass donors? How frequently do we talk to mass donors? Anybody? Not very often. Not often enough. So to show you an example, we've done it for one of the organizations whose cause is usually very misunderstood if I look at the data. It's Habitat. Margaret is a donor to Habitat. One classic data bias is Democrats donate to Habitat more than Republicans. That's what comes up in the data. We wanted to see, is that actually true? And why do they donate? What are the values that make them donate? If the people in the back of the room can help me shift the feet.
I think everyone should have housing. I think everyone should have a clean, safe environment to live.
That issue I don't feel is political. I don't notice that the right or the left does a better job.
I am left-leaning.
I lean conservative on the majority of issues.
Fairly progressive.
Definitely conservative. I lean more libertarian.
I identify as a leftist.
I'm a registered independent.
I'm registered independent.
I disagree with everybody, basically.
The thing that's always a complication about the government is inefficiency.
I don't believe that the government is the best party to fix everything. As someone who is able, it is my responsibility to help these people if they are willing to help themselves.
We want to give a hand up, not a handout.
It's really important not only for the public perception of these services that this is a hand up, not a handout, but also for the recipient.
It's about opportunity. Everybody gets a chance, and it's up to yours to make the most of it.
Whether we're progressive, moderate, or conservative, we're feeling the same impact at the challenge of limited housing.
It's community that really matters.
Thank you. You'll see this slide several times. What this is meant to represent is everything I'm talking about. There are ways to do it in an enterprise fashion and a MVP fashion, skeleton. In an enterprise fashion, if I could talk to all of our donors, and I could actually convert it into knowing what they care about, probably would look something like this. I probably would be able to segment all of our existing one-time donors, understand their emotional state, understand their anxieties, understand their motivation, their tensions, their decision criteria to donate, their motivations. I think somebody said it. Furthermore, I'll be able to talk to them. I'll be able to talk to them just like I talk to ChatGPT. I'll be able to go and chat to my donors about, oh, I'm thinking about launching this new campaign. I'm thinking about this new creative asset. Would you resonate with it? Would it work for your segment? That would feel like a magic wand, would it? That is one of the examples of what is possible already today. Furthermore, interviews is one example. And what we found AI to be the most useful for is analyzing what I call unstructured data. That would be interviews. That would be recordings of calls with the giving officers. That would be recordings of calls that they have with maybe a mid-level officer. Any conversation that gives information about me more than a data append. Furthermore, what is the difference from, let's say, a focus group? When I do a focus group, I don't really know if I have a representative sample. I can use AI to help me identify the smallest representative sample within my donor database to know like how many people I actually need to talk to find out more to represent the entire file. Usually, the number that we find is anywhere from 0.5 to 1% of the file. It's not that big. But besides just feeding it new data, there is something that can be used from what everybody in this room already has. That is historical assets that they responded to. And email, direct mail, display assets are essentially what I call segmentation that already happened. For any organization with a history of 5, 10, 15 years of fundraising, by pure nature of law, or law of nature, there is enough difference in the creative assets that you shared with your donors in terms of the emotional values that that message resonates with. The problem isn't having that information. The problem is it's hard to analyze, and it's economically not viable to do without AI. Feeding that history of all of the landing pages I resonated with, all of the emails I responded to, all of the display assets, all of the donation form messages. Fundraise app does that at the scale of donation page. You can combine that with everything else. And that gives the same representative sample as adding interviews would do. Furthermore, you don't need to build a totally new tool for that. But before I go there, let's play a little game. So we've done this for Habitat. And the interesting part is the insights that come out usually are not entirely obvious. There are 4 colorful cards at your desks. They say persona 1, 2, 3, and 4. There is 1 set per table. It's not individual. They're also on the screen. It's the same cards as on the screen. Just take a minute, read through them, familiarize yourselves with the types of these personas that came up for Habitat. I'm going to share a couple quotes that we've heard over the course of these interviews, and I'll ask captains to raise 1 card that your table believes this quote belongs to. Everybody ready? Okay. First quote. Yeah. When we were preparing for this session, I was rehearsing with one of my team members, and I just had a placeholder. And they actually started thinking which persona it would be, so I decided to keep it in, just for giggles. But being real, this is a real quote from one of the interviews. I've always felt that when you just hand someone something, you're kind of taking something from them at the same time. Like there's a sense that they can handle things on their own. I want to give in a way that says, I believe in you. Which of these personas would say it? Orange? Okay, number 1, orange. Orange. Can see orange. Orange, orange. Blue. And that table in the back, Brian? Orange? Okay. Fundraise app team gets a gold star. But it's number 3, it's not number 1. It's number 3. And the obvious decision that I also made as a human when I was reading through this quote, and even when I was reading through the transcript with this person, is, well, clearly for them it's about a hand up. It's like they want some sweat equity. But when you read through the entire interview, and once you dig into a few questions behind, you realize that for this person in particular, this is really about giving dignity to somebody. They care about that much more, and they're willing to sacrifice the sweat equity for that feeling of dignity. I wouldn't guessed it without 7 questions, which are impossible to find in a data append. That's why we need unstructured data. Let's do another one. I need to know that whatever I'm supporting actually solves the problem, not just moves it somewhere else. I've seen these programs where people come out the other end and they're still, it's still a problem, just a different address. Okay, let's see some colors. Pink, 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 pink. Roshat? Pink. That team in the back right. Tara? I can't see. Pink? Nobody gets a gold star. Number 4. This person was the most classic example of a NIMBY, not in my backyard. And again, it doesn't come out necessarily in this one quote. That's why, in our experience, where we found the power of the tools that we have now is going beyond a multi-choice survey, going beyond a data append, going to data that otherwise is inaccessible to us. Interviews, Facebook feed, Reddit. It's like I always tell salespeople when they reach out to me with a cold pitch, if you spent a day reading my entire digital footprint, you would probably sell to me. You would know much more about my values and my inspiration. But it's impossible to do at a human level. We can use tech to do that. The enterprise version is what I shared with you before. You can build your own ChatGPT, where this data becomes essentially a virtual donor and a virtual segmentation tool. But it's hard to do, right? The quicker, call it DIY, call it skeleton solution, could be what I call a lemonade stand, where we use AI to help us create prompts for AI. Which organizations have Copilot, Salesforce, Google, any one of those? Any of the above? OK, pretty much everybody. How many of you use your personal accounts with any other tool to write prompts to then load into the enterprise? One? OK. That is probably the technique that I found to be the most helpful with using AI, where instead of going into the enterprise tool and saying, which of my creatives are driving sustainers, for example, instead of doing that, using my personal account and just making it create a magic wand for me. For example, I'm working for a nonprofit that uses Salesforce, Luminate, and Google Ads. I'm looking to understand which my creatives are driving sustainers. Help me write a prompt that uses API, retrieves all the data. And I'm looking for a technical data engineer prompt. I don't have data engineering skills, but I can use AI to help me imitate them. I can use the same for segmentation. One methodology I personally love is the psychological framework called jobs to be done, which is something that existed for 60 years. But what is a job that our donors are hiring us for? There are probably 1,000 books written about it. None of us have time to read them. Why not ask AI to create that prompt for us in the first place? I can show you an example of what the output usually looks like. I'm not going to bore you with about 2,000 rows of technical code. What comes back is data engineer grade. It's terrific. And then you just load that into your enterprise tool for a proper data export. This is one of the examples, by the way, on that big printouts that Alexandra handed to all of you. There are 4 examples like this of an enterprise and a DIY solution. What I just spoke about is segmentation and personalization. You don't need to go through it now. That's your takeaway. You can read it after. And once I have all of this data, I can use it for what we call Instagram algorithm based on our own data. Who feels that Instagram knows exactly what they want to see next? Or TikTok? Yep, exactly. Which of you personalize your creatives to the same level Instagram does it? Exactly. There was a hand raised. Wow. How do you do that? Yeah. Okay, I like that. So that's a good example of turning this data into an Instagram for us, right? Or TikTok, whatever is your poison. Using the data about the entire interactions, the entire history of interactions our donors had with us, to personalize their experience with the help of AI. To show you what this might look like, and not this, not yet. Even without going into generating new assets, that same model that we use to essentially speak about like who our donors are, we can apply the same thinking to analyze every asset. In this example, these are several display ads, several social assets that already exist, and several search ads. And we can see how exactly will they perform for every one of my donor personas. What is the score? What will be the conversion rate? What will be the click-through rate? Furthermore, if something like this search ad is predicted to have a fairly low CTR, what if I just asked AI to fix it? That would feel like that magic wand again. And it will run for a second, but once it's run, like while it's running, the main value that we've seen, of course, AI is not yet at the point where, oh yeah, let's outsource the all creative work. No. But it is at the point where it can help us eliminate the worst options and look around the corner to not invest real dollars into what will not work. Of course, today it's taken longer than I wish it did. There you are. And all of us, like, it comes up with a different example, which all of a sudden creates essentially a 2x difference for me between the original and remixed in terms of how can I optimize it. And with something like text, it works essentially instantaneously. Of course, images are harder, video is harder, but how much time this frees up, and more importantly, how much budget does it free up for us to not be testing something that will not work. Same can be done, again, there is a DIY version. That is the third use case on that big sheet of paper that Alexandra shared with you. Please. It does. I'll give a short answer, and then we can talk one-on-one more if you want. But 2 answers, build or buy, right? For build, I use AI to learn AI. Yes, I use AI to learn AI. I use AI to help me learn what I don't know, just for my own personal curriculum. And 7 months ago, like even within our company, 7 months ago, I decided I want to start an AI branch. 7 months later, we have a number of proprietary tools that we built using, like we built with my time, which is probably 5%, and 1 person. But that's the build part. And then there is a buy part. There are so many tools right now out there that you can use, which is perfect. But for personal use AI to help you learn AI. Same as what I was sharing with the prompts. Give it an objective and ask it to give you a second prompt. I usually use AI to write 2 cycles of prompts before I actually use a prompt. Okay. Break. Shake your arms. Shake your legs. Let's go to a second leg of the stool. Misaligned digital media. How many of you manage digital ads or digital agencies directly? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, several. how many of your reports look like this directionally? There is cost per donor, there is ROI, there is channel breakdown, there is some best performing creative, like a couple other standard dimensions, conversion rate, essentially classic marketing report. Does your report look something similar to this? Okay, for those of you who don't directly manage agencies or are not exposed to it, just look at this for a second. There are a couple questions I want to ask you based on this report or the report that you use. First, how easy and do you know your organization's average cost per donor? This is easy. Who does? Oh, I was expecting everybody. Okay. What if we get a little harder? How much would it cost to acquire one more sustainer? Yep. What about the hardest one? Where to invest that incremental $1 million that the board gives you 1 month before the end of fiscal year for the best cost per sustainer? Okay. Would it be cool to know those things? There's a second card. It's green. It says Misaligned Digital Media. And by the way, before we dive into this, let's switch captains. One other person per table. Who'll be a captain now? Okay. Thank you. Well, yeah, there are not much choice here. Raise your hand, new captain. Cool. New captain. We're shifting captains. Okay. Greg? Okay. I see hands. Cool. These two tables? Oh, you're the new captain? Okay. And Brian, your table? Who's the new captain? Okay. Sounds good. So, classic example. Today, digital usually stops at return by channel, search, social, display, CTV, add your own, doesn't matter. But we don't necessarily know how much every sustainer costs or how much one would cost the next one. On the other hand, frequently the orgs invest in face-to-face or direct mail, and we usually know a clear cost per sustainer, but less granularity otherwise in terms of creative, etc. If we had a magic wand, what would you need or want to know to compare digital and face-to-face? Those are the two channels I hear most frequently. How would you invest differently? And how far would you scale digital? And which channels would you do that for? We'll take a few minutes. I'll just come around. While I'm doing this, another just funny story. Alexandra, can you please stand up? So, thank you, Alexandra, for helping me out. So, Alexandra doesn't work for us. Alexandra is a daughter of my business partner. My team was too busy to support me. So Ola raised her hand. Thank you. So captains, thank you very much. Let's hear from some of you. Who wants to go first? Okay, yes. Can you speak up a little?
Yeah, so connecting face-to-face owners with digital
So how to connect face-to-face and digital? Yes? Okay, attribution. So what I'm hearing is you don't really know the true cost of face-to-face, digital, and them together. Fair? Yeah, it's different numbers. Yes, awesome. There was a hand in the back. Topes? Payback? Okay, so 12, 24, 36-month payback. Please.
You said how
Love it. How much it costs per donor to acquire, especially in digital. How much does it really cost per donor and sustainer to acquire? Love it. Please. Oh, spend on okay, spend on not asking for gifts, like branding, awareness. Got it? Yep. So what is the wasted spend, if you wish? Yes? Somewhere like this 3. Yes. 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 Yes, would love to compare canvassing to digital face-to-face, apples to apples, yes. 2 more tables here and we're good. Please. Awesome. Yes, so how many touches, what exactly, like what is the minimum I need to spend is kind of the outcome, yes. And the last one, the one in the back. Yes, I heard from you first, thank you. Who knows these 2 logos? Okay. Most organizations I talk to, specifically in the context of digital, invest 40, 50, 60% of their entire digital marketing budget into 2 things. One is called Google Performance Max. One is called Meta Advantage Plus. Did you hear these names before? Yeah, okay. I always think of them, by the way, I didn't know how it's called. It's called a Plinky game. Plinko? Plinko. I didn't know it's called a Plinko game. But a Plinko game is a game where I drop a disc and I do not know where it lands. It's totally random. It can land somewhere else. That's how I sometimes feel about digital investment. And somebody was talking about comparing apples to apples. When I talk to, especially CFOs, CFOs are very clear at seeing revenue from donors. Mass donors give money, mid-level donors give money, sustainers give money, and new-to-file donors give money. Money is donor level. But investment is rarely donor level. Investment is channel level. I invest X dollars in search, Y dollars in social, Z in direct mail. Canvassing in this regard is actually easier than digital, mainly because the only output that is generated is sustainers. So I can actually pretty accurately calculate my cost per sustainer. But for digital, if my search investment is generating $100 cost per donor, and only 20% of those donors are sustainers, is my cost per sustainer 500? It's not. I don't know how much I'm investing to acquire them. This was solved. Many other industries solve it. One example I love is travel. This is a map of Denver. These are 2 different Omni hotels. They're owned by 2 different owners. They're within 1 mile proximity of one another. They invest their marketing budget in a way where the spend of one does not generate bookings for another one. I only generate bookings for myself. And they do it in search, they do it in social, they do it in programmatic. They are able to control exactly where the output of every dollar they invest is in. They untangle the Plinko game into all the possible outcomes, and they drop the ball exactly where it needs to be to land in a certain outcome where they want it to be. But it looks like this. they have probably 1,000 campaigns in every one of the media platforms, including some Performance Max, some Advantage Plus, but they control it via the structure. And they have a team, marketing team this size. Any nonprofit here has a marketing team, digital, this size. Yeah, not surprising. So back to AI. Another thing where AI can solve it, add that on top. Add that on top. Don't replace. I'm not here to say Performance Max or Advantage Plus don't have a place. They do. But add on top. I think Dana was talking about in the morning how Meta's CPA fluctuates like this, just alongside their stock price. They're really good at optimizing for their stock price, not for your cost per donor. We can add the team on top of that. And I think of AI agents as essentially a team of interns in investment banking. You bring them in, they're very excited to do whatever you tell them to do. They're very excited to work 23 hours on a day. But I would never give my entire budget to a team of interns. Would you? Yeah, I would train them. I would train them hard up front. One way to use AI to create something like this, again, enterprise and DIY. Enterprise looks something like this, where you create, in this example, 13 agents, each of whom work 24/7, analyzing every one of your campaign, trying new ideas, starting new things, analyzing channels, analyzing the fluctuation by audience, by person, by creative in the channel. A million things that happen every now and then, but they work for you. They don't work for Google, they work for you. They don't work for Meta, they work for you. They are trained on your data, and then they use Google's data on top of that. That's what I personally always find fascinating about agentic AI. And that term, like agentic, what is it? It's using AI as agents on my behalf. Codifying the process that I want them to follow and having them follow it when I'm not watching. The enterprise version looks like this. And it takes time to build and all. The DIY version is on your printouts as an example. And in that, I'm using Claude. The reason I'm using Claude is because Claude has something that's called MCP to all of the advertising platforms, which is basically a dictionary that allows Claude to talk to it. The main benefit is to be able to create that complex structure that requires the control given. So your organization does not invest 50% of its budget with one single goal of increasing revenue, but you invest certain share of the budget into acquiring sustainers in this channel, acquiring new to file in another channel, converting emergency donors into a third channel. It takes a lot of effort, but that effort can be automated. And it becomes even more important with new ads tools. Who's heard about OpenAI launching their ads last week? Okay, a couple. OpenAI launched ads in ChatGPT last week. The biggest difference compared to search is going to be that there is now 10 times more information or 10 times longer prompt of how donors are looking for what you care about. There is 10 times more context to personalize. There is 10 times more unstructured data. And there is 10 times more complexity that would be lost otherwise, and it requires management. So building that structure, and for example, using Claude to analyze your current ad structure, and just a simple breakdown of how much do I invest into acquiring sustainers and what is my true cost per sustainer in digital can be already addressed, even via the tools that all of us have. So back to the magic wand example. The two real magic wands that we're all seeking here, one is how do we move that Margaret from sitting on a train to pulling up her phone, looking at that email that Habitat sends her, and actually responding to it and clicking on it. This was clearly AI generated, you can see. I wouldn't use it. That's why there is no examples here about using AI for creative yet. And probably the more important application of that magic wand is how can I use these tools to help myself, help Alex, help every one of you in this room to not feel like this, to feel like this, to go a little bit back to the cause that brought us all here to this space. For me, it was my dad, and that's why I donate to all the cancer organizations. For every one of us, it's something else. AI buys us time to focus on the work that moves that needle. That I think is the most important magic wand here. The printouts are for you to take. There are some examples, and I'm right on the dot. So Q&A, or do I move on? OK, Brian, you're the MC. You can take a few questions, or we can talk afterwards.